Alrighty, thanks again for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Today's webinar will provide an overview of the Action for Healthy Kids 2016-2017 Game On grant. So we're glad you're here with us today. My name is Heidi Milby, and I'm a school program manager with Action for Healthy Kids. I also have my colleague Jocelyn Tony, who's Action for Healthy Kids' field coordinator, on the call. Jocelyn's going to be answering your questions throughout the webinar, and also we'll save some time dedicated at the end to answer some final questions with the group. So before we get started, let's go ahead and review some logistics. Once you're linked in, you should see the control panel, which is usually on the right-hand side of your screen. You can call in either using your telephone or your speakers to listen to the presentation, but we have muted everyone to avoid static and background interference. You'll notice at the bottom of the right-hand side, you'll see a dialog box, and this is where you can type in questions as we're going along, and Jocelyn will try and get them answered to her best of ability while we're doing the webinar, and then certainly we'll have that time at the end of the presentation. If for some reason we're not able to address your question, we'll definitely follow up via email after the webinar. And finally, this webinar is being recorded, so links to the recording and the handouts will be sent to you within 2 to 3 business days after the webinar. So let's take a look at our agenda before we get started. We got a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So first, I do want to give you a little bit of background about Action for Healthy Kids. And then I'll provide a brief overview of all of the grant opportunities that are available as part of our 2016 to 2017 School Grants for Healthy Kids program. Of course, we'll be focusing most of the time on the Game On grant opportunities in particular, providing you with an overview of the application process, the grant application itself, important deadlines, tips for applying. We'll talk about a few project ideas, really everything you'll need to submit a successful application. And then we'll end with some information about what Action for Healthy Kids' technical assistance looks like during the grant process. Of course, Jocelyn will answer the questions as she can throughout the webinar, and we'll save some time at the end to cover those questions with the group. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So first, as I mentioned, I want to give you a little bit of background about Action for Healthy Kids. So Action for Healthy Kids' mission is to fight childhood obesity, undernourishment, and physical inactivity by helping schools become healthier places. Our network is all across the country. We're made up of moms, dads, teachers, students, school and community leaders, school wellness experts, you name it. They're part of our network who have banded together to really create healthier learning environments for our children. And ultimately, we believe that everyone truly does have a part to play in ending the nation's childhood obesity epidemic. And we've created programs, tools, and resources to help make that possible. We were founded in 2002 by former Surgeon General David Satcher, and today we have more than 100,000 members all across the country. We also partner with dozens of professional associations, government agencies, and corporations at the national, the state, and the local level as well. And as I mentioned, our goal is really to create healthy school communities. So we want children to be able to make healthy choices from the minute they walk in the door, at the beginning of the school day, to the minute they leave at the end of the school day, as well as at home. So let's take a minute to talk about why health and wellness should be incorporated into the school setting. Of course, most of you on this call either work with or for a school or a district, so these reasons will likely resonate with you. But I think it's important to mention, since we're talking about healthy schools. So we know that schools are neither the cause nor the entire solution for America's childhood obesity epidemic. However, we also know that schools show kids how the world should be. They provide that institutional approval for many behaviors related to food choices and to physical activity. We also know that teachers and administrators and school staff are key role models and could be great role models for health. And we also know that schools show kids what we value and what is important in our community. So it's a natural fit that we include health and wellness as part of it. School policies, school activities, school programs, school practices, they all reinforce behaviors our children are learning. So by incorporating health and wellness as part of these practices, we're demonstrating to kids how important health is, and we can set them up for success in the future. So what exactly is this concept of school wellness? So school wellness is ultimately the belief that schools can and they must promote and reinforce healthy eating, physical activity, nutrition education, and physical education in order to increase student achievement. And that's key, that this is really just not about health. School wellness, rather, is about health and student academic achievement, and they go hand in hand. So we at Action for Healthy Kids were absolutely thrilled to announce our 2016-2017 School Grants for Healthy Kids opportunities. During the 2016-2017 school year, Action for Healthy Kids will award over 1,000 schools nationwide to implement school breakfast and nutrition and physical activity initiatives. So about half of these grant opportunities will be specifically for those Game On grant opportunities that we're talking about today. All of our grant opportunities range from $500 to $5,000, and they may be awarded to K-12 schools, PTOs or PTA groups, or the school health and wellness teams. And I do want to note here that unfortunately grants cannot be awarded to community-based or nonprofit organizations. They're really intended to be awarded to schools or to school groups. Also of note, K-12 simply refers to schools that serve any grades K-12. So it doesn't have to be a specific K-12 institution that serves all of those grades. Our grants can be awarded to elementary, middle, or high schools. So if you have further questions about your eligibility, we'll address them later on in the webinar, but please feel free to enter those questions in the question box and we'll get them answered for you. So a little bit more about our 2016-2017 grant opportunities. So as I mentioned, we do have grant opportunities for both breakfast grants and nutrition and physical activity initiatives, which are our Game On grants. So with regard to breakfast grants, all states are eligible to apply. There are 2 grant opportunities, one for universal and alternative breakfast, which is a school building grant, and then one for district breakfast, where a district can apply on behalf of multiple schools within that district. So if you're interested in learning more about breakfast grants, Action for Healthy Kids did host a breakfast-focused grant webinar yesterday, and you can check out our archived webinars later this week to listen to that recording. The Game On grants available, I do want to note they must include a physical activity and a nutrition component to support becoming recognized as a health promoting school. So this is important. When you submit your grant application, please make sure that you have both a healthy eating and a physical activity initiative. And we'll talk a little bit more later in the webinar about some project ideas for physical activity and for nutrition. So let's take a quick step back and talk about what is Game On, since of course we're talking about Game On grants. So Game On is one of Action for Healthy Kids' program. It's our signature program. It was developed initially to support schools, staff, students, and families in incorporating healthy food choices and physical activity into their daily lives and into the school environment, with the ultimate goal of getting that school recognized as a health-promoting school. So based on our work with schools that have used the Game On program, we've learned that Game On not only helps students increase their physical activity levels before and after school, but it's also helped improve knowledge around healthy foods to eat and making better food choices at school and at home. We also did a study with 20 schools nationwide where 95% of the schools that were using Game On made changes to their wellness practices as a result of their Game On programming. What we know is that schools can go from not having any health and wellness initiatives, not having a school health team, and over the course of 3 years with using Game On, they can become recognized nationally as a health promoting school. So we've seen a lot of success with Game On, and it really doesn't matter where your school is with your school wellness initiatives, whether you're starting a school health team or you've been implementing wellness initiatives for years. Game On is really intended to serve as a tool to provide you with the resources and ideas so that you can continually improve and build upon your wellness programming. It can also be used to complement other programs that your school may already have in place. So if you're already implementing a school wellness program or initiative, Game On can really be used to supplement those efforts. The program itself is housed online. We'll send the link to in the follow-up email. And online, it's really intended to be a one-stop shop for school wellness resources. So we call these grants Game On grants because schools will work through each of the 6 steps of Game On as part of the grant process. And then part of Action for Healthy Kids' technical assistance is to support your physical activity and nutrition efforts through ideas and resources found within the Game On program. So just to briefly review some of the goals of the Game On program. So Game On really strives to not only help students learn about sound nutrition and physical activity, but help them practice it as well. So Game On engages students in making better food choices at school and at home. And it also focuses on engaging students in getting more physical activity, not only at school, but before school and after school as well. It also provides schools with a framework and access to tools to integrate health concepts and activities throughout the school year. This framework can also be used, as I mentioned, to complement other wellness initiatives or programs that your school already has in place. It's intended to engage educators, school staff, families, and community members in helping students eat better and move more. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we really believe that everyone has a role in helping schools and students be healthier, and Game On strives to help with that. And then finally, Game On is really intended to support long-term wellness policies by promoting sound nutrition and physical activity throughout the school campus. So the Game On program provides strategies and ideas to help you put your school's district local school wellness policy into action. So just a little bit more about Game On before we move on. As I mentioned, the Action for Healthy Kids grant process mirrors the Game On program. So Game On includes the following 6 steps as a framework to build a strong and sustainable school health and wellness program. So you can see the first 3 steps are listed on your slide. But this is where the flexibility comes in. So for example, if you already have a diverse school health team in place, you can skip step 1 and start right with step 2. It's really designed to meet you where you are. So as you can see, the first 3 steps are listed on your screen. So the first step is to gather your team. So as part of this step, Game On provides resources to help you identify volunteers from your school staff and parents and community members to serve on a team. So Action for Healthy Kids recommends that you include at least 5 members on your school health team to make sure that you have the capacity to implement your initiatives and projects. As part of the Game On process, we'll ask you at the beginning of the grant to identify the 5 individuals that will serve as your school health team. Step 2 focuses on assessing the health of the school environment using the School Health Index to identify areas of needed improvement. So each school that is awarded a Game On grant will be asked to complete the School Health Index upon receiving the grant award to complete step 2. Step 3 focuses on creating and implementing an action plan. So what we know is that a clear action plan helps serve as a roadmap for the wellness team and helps outline priorities and goals for the project or initiative. So after grant-funded schools complete the School Health Index, they'll receive an auto-generated action plan that provides recommendations for how you can use Game On to improve upon areas of needed improvement. So the Action for the Kids grant process certainly mirrors these first 3 steps of Game On. On your screen now, you'll see the final 3 steps of Game On. So step 4 focuses on finding activities. So within Game On, there's a school blueprint, which I'll show you in just a minute, that has over 70 Eat Better and Move More Game On activity ideas that have resources, ideas, and tips for implementing various activities within your school. So these activities can be used to support your funded physical activity and nutrition initiatives. Step 5 focuses on engaging parents, families, and community. So as part of Step 5, we encourage schools to partner with parents, volunteers, and community organizations on their school wellness initiatives to help promote consistent messages within the community and also to ensure sustainability. So all awarded schools will be asked to host an Every Kid Healthy Week event in April 2017 to engage parents in the local school community and school wellness efforts. We'll talk a little bit more about this later in the webinar. And then finally, Step 6 focuses on receiving recognition. So Game On encourages schools to apply for recognition through the Healthier U.S. School Challenge Smarter Lunchrooms Initiative or another Healthy School Certification program. So after all of the great work that you do, Step 6 is really designed to celebrate your success. So as part of the grant, Action for Healthy Kids will provide technical assistance and resources to funded schools to help them get the recognition that they deserve for their efforts. So that's kind of a brief overview of Game On and how it's related to the Game On grant. I wanted to take just a moment to talk about the Healthier U.S. School Challenge Smarter Lunchrooms Initiative for those of you that are not familiar with this initiative on the call. So the Healthier U.S. School Challenge Smarter Lunchrooms Initiative is a voluntary initiative established in 2014 to recognize schools that have created healthier school environments by promoting nutrition and physical activity. So there are 4 award levels, each of which has a monetary award, starting with $500 at the bronze level and increasing by $500 increments up to $2,000 at the gold award of distinction level. So as I mentioned, within Step 6 of Game On, there's resources and a lot more information about the Healthier U.S. School Challenge Smarter Lunchrooms Initiative, as well as some additional benefits about why your school should consider applying. If you are interested in learning more about the Healthier U.S. School Challenge, I encourage you to attend our webinar on Wednesday, March 16th. With our guest presenter from the United States Department of Agriculture, we'll provide you with an overview of the application components and give you some tips for applying. So definitely check it out if you're interested. We will provide that link to register in the follow-up email. A quick note about accessing Game On. So I encourage you after the webinar or at a later date to check out the Game On website to learn more about the Game On framework and to identify ways that your school can use it to support your efforts. So you can see on your screen that is the link to Game On. On the right-hand side, you'll see each of the 6 steps that we just mentioned. So you can simply click on the step that you're interested in, and you'll navigate to that page to learn more information. Alternatively, once you go to the Game On page, you'll see this Game On blueprint that I mentioned earlier. So this is linked to step 4, find activities. So if you're interested in simply perusing some of the activity ideas that are within Game On, you can click on a room in the blueprint and it'll take you to activity ideas. So for example, if you're a physical education teacher, you could click on the gym and it'll lead you to a bunch of eat better and move more activity ideas that you could implement in the gymnasium. So again, I encourage you to check it out as you complete your grant application. It can also provide you with some ideas if you're still thinking about what physical activity and nutrition initiatives that you'd like to apply for. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about Action for Healthy Kids and the Game On program, let's dive into the 2016-2017 Game On grant opportunities. So the first thing to note, all states are eligible. Many of you in your state, you have an Action for Healthy Kids state coordinator who can answer questions that you have about the application. And some states that don't have a state coordinator, our national office is definitely available and happy to help you navigate the application. We will provide that contact information later in the webinar and in the follow-up email. Additionally, all schools, regardless of your enrollment or your free and reduced percentage, are eligible to participate, to apply. And as I mentioned, applicants must include that physical activity and a nutrition component within their grant applications. So only schools with both components will be considered. And again, we'll talk about project ideas in just a minute. Before we dive into the specific grant requirements, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge our funders for the 16-17 Game On grant. So our funders include CSX Transportation, Tyson Foods, Materne GoGo, squeeZ, and Saputo. So of course, we're very grateful, and these grants would not be possible without their support. So definitely wanted to acknowledge them before we move on. So a little bit more about the Game On grant. So the grant size ranges from $500 to $2,500. Most schools will receive $1,000, and schools that have been funded in previous years are eligible for a sustainability grant of $500 to support their existing initiative. On the grant application, however, you'll notice that all applicants will be prompted to apply for a project worth $1,000. So there's an additional question. If you would like to apply for more funding, you can note that in that additional question. Awarded schools will be asked to complete the school health index, as I referenced earlier, increase physical activity minutes per day at school. So if you don't currently have 30 minutes, your goal will be to increase to at least 30 minutes, or increase by 10% if your minutes are already at 30, or are already more than 30. Additionally, you'll be asked to advance the school nutrition environment by providing access to healthy foods as part of your nutrition initiative. You'll be asked to provide information to students and parents on the importance of physical activity and healthy eating. You'll be asked to work toward healthy school certification. So this is what I mentioned earlier within Game On of getting recognized for your efforts. So our Action for Healthy Kids state coordinators will work with you to make sure that you're really advancing your school wellness efforts. And for those that are eligible to apply for recognition, they'll work with you to do that. And then finally, you'll be asked to join in the celebration during Every Kid Healthy Week during April 2017. So what is Every Kid Healthy Week? So Every Kid Healthy Week is an annual observance that's held the 4th week of April. It's recognized on the National Health Observance calendar, and it really focuses on the nation's childhood obesity epidemic and its solution. So sound nutrition, regular physical activity, and health-promoting school programs. And so the idea behind Every Kid Healthy Week is it's really an opportunity to celebrate your efforts. So all awarded schools will be asked to host an Every Kid Healthy Week event by hosting a family-friendly, health-promoting event during April 2017. So to give you a sense of some of the some of the things that schools have hosted during Every Kid Healthy Week is schools have hosted family health care nights, they've renovated their school playground, they've painted healthy murals on school walls, they've worked in the school garden, they've done healthy food taste tests. So lots of different activity ideas, and that really is the intention behind Every Kid Healthy Week, is find an activity idea where you can engage students and their families and then celebrate during April. So let's talk about project ideas. So listed on your screen are some examples of Move More initiatives, aka physical activity initiatives, that we have awarded in the past. So outdoor active recess, indoor recess as well. We've had some schools do play space refurbishing where they've improved their playground or their outdoor play space areas. We've had schools that have applied for physical education equipment to replenish some of their older equipment. Gymnasium refurbishing as well. Brain breaks in classroom physical activity are also a popular activity idea of integrating additional physical activity minutes throughout the day in classrooms. Of course, we'll fund before-school programming and after-school programming, so if there's a specific club that you'd like to start as part of this grant, fitness assessments and testing, and then walk and bike to school initiatives. So those are kind of the big buckets for physical activity initiatives, but of course, if you have other ideas, there is that space under other where you can include that, and we'll of course consider it with your application. And here are some examples of Eat Better initiatives, so nutrition initiatives that we have awarded in the past. So nutrition education, of course, school gardens, competitive foods or smart snacks, salad bars, smarter lunchrooms, healthier fundraisers, and then of course classroom celebrations and rewards. So there are just a couple of ideas. Of course, if you have specific questions, definitely let your state coordinator know, or like I said, we'll talk through some contact information later in the webinar. So let's talk through the steps for applying. So first, you'll want to complete the paper application with your school health team member. So we encourage doing this with a team from the get-go to encourage their buy-in and support. So if you don't have a school health team, use the grant as an opportunity to form one. And when you're completing the application, pay attention to the character count, not the word count, as many of the questions have character count limits. Next, write the application as if the person reviewing it knew nothing about the issue. So when we review your application, we want to make sure we fully understand your project. So consider having an external reviewer read the application to ensure that it makes sense to an outside individual. Next, you'll enter and submit the grant application in Action for Healthy Kids' online school portal. I'll talk you through the portal step by step in just a moment so you can feel comfortable with that technology. And because we have this wonderful technology and this online grant portal, no paper applications will be accepted. So I encourage you to begin entering your grant application in the portal sooner rather than later so we can resolve any technical issues early on. So I'm going to walk you through the online school grant portal so you feel comfortable with this technology. So this is a login screen. If you've applied for a grant before or you've completed Action for Healthy Kids' School Health Index, you should already have a login. But if not, you'll need to create one. And that process is really simple. You'll be asked to simply provide your name, your email, and choose a password, and then you're all set and you have a new login for the school portal. Once you enter the school portal, this is what you'll see. So this is the grant portal homepage. I find it helpful that if I'm ever within the portal and I'm lost and not quite sure where I am, I can click on Home on the upper left-hand side, and that will take me back to this home page so I can orient myself again. So I encourage you to use that practice as well if that's helpful. So within the home page, you'll want to go to the left-hand side and click on My Profile. And once you click on My Profile, you'll see that it'll ask you some personal information. This is really just to fully set up your account. So if you've already had an account in the past, you should be good to go here, but definitely take a peek at it and make sure that none of the information needs to be updated. If you travel down on the left-hand side, you'll see a tab, My School. So this is an important step, so definitely make sure you do this step before you start applying for a grant. So this, by clicking on My School, this will take you to a page where you can affiliate yourself with a school. So in other words, you'll want to select the school that you'd like to apply for a grant. So you can affiliate yourself with multiple schools on this page as well. So for example, if you're a district level individual or you're working with multiple schools, just make sure you check off the box for each school that you're working with. So what you want to do on this page is simply enter your zip code, search for your school, and then check the box on the left for the school you'd like to select. And if you have any issues locating your school, definitely let us know and we'll be happy to make sure we get that in the system for you. Once you've affiliated yourself with a school, you'll want to click on the Grants tab right under My School. So this is where you can start to apply for a grant. So after you've clicked on the Grants tab, scroll down to see the available grant opportunities. So this is what you'll see when you initially go here. Scroll down, and then you'll see the grant opportunities listed. So since you're on this webinar, I'm going to assume that you want to click on the 2016-2017 Game On grant. So this is what it will look like. It'll provide an overview of the grant, the states that are eligible, which of course is all states. And then when you're ready, you can click on Start the Application for a Single School. That's the green button there on the bottom of the screen. And once you click on this button, it'll move you forward and you can start the grant application. If you are a district level person applying for multiple grants or multiple schools, you will need to submit a separate grant for each school that you're applying for. So after you click on the Start My Application button, you will select the school for which you'd like to apply for a grant. So once you've selected your school, click the Go button. And here's the application. So a couple of just quick things to note on the application. There are several tabs listed at the top. So make sure you complete all of the required information. Otherwise, you'll receive an error. So most of the questions on this grant application are required, and that is noted here on the portal for you. You can save your progress as you go, so don't feel like you need to answer all of the questions at the same time. And you can definitely slowly work over this over the course of the next several weeks before the deadline. Of course, when you're ready to submit, click on the Submit button at the bottom of the screen. And then once your application has been submitted, you'll see the green Grant Submitted message at the top. If you have not filled out all of the appropriate information, you will get an error message there at the top. So definitely make sure that you get that confirmation that your grant has been submitted. Here are a few other tips to help you navigate the school portal technology. So first, use the most updated version of Internet browser. So we recommend Google Chrome and Mozilla Foxfire tend to be the best with this particular technology, so I encourage you to use those browsers. Also, save often. We definitely know how Internet can sometimes go in and out. We want to make sure that your work gets saved. So I recommend saving at a minimum when you finish each tab, but certainly more often than that if you can. You can move through the application by clicking on those tabs at the top, so that's an easy navigation tool. And then, as I mentioned previously, please complete all of your required responses before submitting, and definitely pay attention to that character count. There are a number of character count limits on several of the questions. And if there are errors when you submit, you will see that error box at the top of the portal, so you'll need to address that error, resubmit, and if there are any additional errors, that error message will keep popping up, and it'll direct you to the question that needs to be fixed. So continue through that process again until you get that green Grant Submitted box at the top. So here's a summary of the steps we covered just for your reference. In order to get to the school portal, you can access it through the school grants page. So the website, of course, is listed on your screen, and we'll share that in the follow-up materials. But if you scroll down to the bottom of the school grants webpage and click on the Apply Now button, that will take you to the school portal. And of course, you can also bookmark that school portal website so that you have it for future use. Let's take a minute to review some of the important deadlines. So Friday, April 1st, I think is probably the most important deadline. That is when all applications are due. We will, unfortunately, not accept applications after this point, so please allow yourself sufficient time to submit by this date. If you foresee technology being an issue for you, definitely try to start and submit that application several days prior to the deadline to make sure you get that in. On Monday, May 9th, we will award all schools of their status. So all awarded schools will get an email saying that they've been awarded, and then schools that did not receive award will be notified. And then the rest of the deadlines pertain to schools that have been awarded. So as I've mentioned previously, schools will be asked to submit their 5% school health contact team information. This is submitted when they sign on to receive the grant, and also the school health index by the end of May. We'll then host a webinar at the start of the school year in September for all grant-funded schools to orient them to the grant requirements and the overall grant process. And then schools later on will be asked to submit a midterm project report in December, a survey in April sharing information about their Every Kid Healthy Week event, and a final project report due at the end of May. A few tips for you as you write your grant application. So first, make sure your description clearly describes what your school currently is doing and what you hope to do. So this particular question is really the basis for your application. So we want to be able to read it with few to no follow-up questions. So really make sure you're clear in this particular section. Also, don't forget about your sustainability plan. So this is also really important to us. We want to make sure that your project will be sustained beyond the grant year, or at least some of the components will be. So include that, definitely include those details in your sustainability question. Schools can apply for both a breakfast grant and a Game On grant. And finally, make your Game On grant project innovative and fun. We love to see creative grants. It'll definitely put you at the top of the pile if you've got a nice creative grant that you're applying for. And then finally, we want to support your school in doing something to ensure every kid in your school is healthy. So what I always encourage schools to do is make sure your project includes as many students as possible to make sure that more students are getting access to the funds that you're receiving as part of this grant. Some other tips, I want to focus on evaluation. So there are a number of questions around establishing outcomes to evaluate your project. So I want to give you a few ideas for how you can evaluate your project based on what schools have done in the past. So first, student surveys for taste testing. So if you are doing a taste test as part of your grant, I encourage you to incorporate student surveys so you can get feedback from students about what they liked, what they didn't like. Classroom physical activity tracker. So there's a great classroom physical activity tracker located within Game On. So if your project focuses on classroom brain breaks or energizers, consider asking your teachers to track their activity. So even if you don't do it every day or every week, consider doing it periodically, which will help you kind of gauge, are classroom teachers implementing brain breaks, and if so, how often? School health team meeting agendas and minutes. There's also a sample school health team meeting agenda within step 1 of the Game On program that may be helpful. So that's great documentation to document what you've talked about throughout the grant process. Staff parent volunteer surveys, quotes from students, staff, and parents. So consider gathering a quote or two on a monthly basis or even more frequently so that you can have some of that qualitative, descriptive information about what you've been doing. And then, of course, photos. So we'll ask for 5 photos throughout the course of the year. This is a great way to add some color to your evaluation efforts. So definitely take photos as often as you can. A few recommendations for your budget. So the portal will not accept funds that are over the grant amount. So you will get an error if you submit anything that is not $1,000. Equipment should reflect the project. So it should reflect your physical activity and nutrition initiatives. So definitely make sure that whatever you submit in your budget aligns very nicely with your project description. I do want to note that funds cannot be used for staffing, and they will be dispersed in 2 payments. So you'll get 65% upon completion of your terms and conditions, which is saying that your school accepts the grant, and that will be given to you at the beginning of the school year. And then the remaining 35% will be given in January after the submission of the midterm report in December. If your project does require more funding than our grant provides, just indicate how you'll be funding that remaining project ideas from other sources. And as I mentioned, the total award ranges from $500 to $2,500, but you will be asked to submit that budget of $1,000. And one quick tip around this, so if there is an area in the budget that you are not using, go ahead and put 0 in for that, and then for the description of that budget item, put not applicable or NA. That will just help clarify so we know it wasn't a missing component in your budget. So I mentioned earlier that Action for Healthy Kids provides ongoing technical assistance to help your school meet your project goals. So some of the ways that we provide technical assistance are through content-specific webinars. So we host sometimes 2 or 3 webinars each month that can help support your project. We'll also provide monthly newsletters that will have healthy school tips and grant reminders. We'll also provide expert technical assistance from not only our national staff, but also our state staff and local volunteers. We'll provide connections to local resources for additional support with your project. So connections with local community organizations, for example, that can support your Every Kid Healthy Week events. We'll train your school grant team to ensure that they're successful in implementing the project and sustaining your efforts. We'll also provide assistance with your evaluation measurements and assistance with your communication efforts so that your local community knows the great work that you're doing. So in essence, we really want to be your partners throughout the school year and throughout your grant process to help you have a successful project. So I know that was a lot of information. I'm going to pause here to see if we have questions that we can address for the group. Jocelyn, have we had some questions that have come through?
Yes, we've had quite a few of questions. They're still coming in, and it's hard for me to actually keep up. But one of the questions that I'm going to shoot to you, Heidi, that has been coming in a couple of times is related to the School Health Index. And the question is, do they have to fill out the School Health Index before actually being awarded the grant?
Great question. The answer is no, you do not. So in late May, we will ask that schools that have been awarded that they complete the School Health Index. So definitely just focus on the grant application. Don't worry about completing the School Health Index prior to being awarded the grant.
Great. I have another question that came in from Kate. She asked, can grants be used to pay teachers to come in over the summer for training?
Kate, that's a good question. Unfortunately, our funding can't be used for any personnel or staffing costs. So So unfortunately, we cannot fund that sort of project. However, I do also want to note that brought up another question. So the timing of the grant, since you will receive your funds at the beginning of the school year, and you'll submit your final project report at the end of the school year, the funds are really intended to be spent during the course of the actual school year. So that's something to note as you're planning for your project and including your timeline. Do include that your funds most of them will be spent during the school year.
Perfect. Okay, we have another question actually related to funding from Mary. She asked, does your grant money have to be divided 50-50 for physical activity and nutrition?
Great question. Not at all. The only requirement is that you include both components. So within your budget, we would like to see that some of the money is being spent for physical activity and some is being spent for nutrition, but certainly it does not have to be a 50-50 split.
Perfect. Great. Okay, so here's a question from Stephanie asking, if you're applying for multiple schools within the same program, can you use the same application with a different material listed? New PE equipment, for example, for like all 3 levels, or what would that look like?
Yeah, Stephanie, good question. So yes, the short answer is yes. So we will review applications on a school-by-school basis. So we certainly won't review them, grouped together. So if you are applying for multiple schools, same program, if you want to submit the same application for each school, of course, some of the information will be slightly different, mostly around, principal name and contact information and that sort of thing. But you can do that, or if you need to make slight changes related to the budget, if it's an elementary versus high school, for example, that's fine too. So it will be evaluated on an individual school basis. I hope that answers your question, Stephanie. If not, definitely send a follow-up and we'll get it addressed.
Yeah, and in addition, I just wanted to say, like, if you're applying for multiple schools, we really encourage you guys to go on our website and download the paper application so that you're able to write down your answers, and then from there, just adjust if you're applying for multiple schools based on that school. Okay, and I think, Heidi, we have probably time for a couple more. So this one's related to physical activity. For the requirement of 30 minutes of physical activity per day, can activity before and after school be included? So can things like walking, school bus, or running clubs that are before or after school programs be included in this requirement?
Absolutely. So you'll notice in the grant application there's a question that has a table that will ask you for your average minutes for various physical activities such as recess, PE, walk and bike to school. So that can kind of give you a sense of how those minutes will be added up. So what we'll do is we'll kind of use those big bucket categories as ways that your school is providing physical activity. So certainly before and after school definitely count.
Great. Okay. Heidi, do we have time for a couple more?
Sure, yeah, if we have a couple more questions, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. So what percentage of the student population must meet the 30 minutes of physical activity per day requirement to be included in that total 30 minutes?
Mm-hmm. So what we'll do, and this gets a bit technical, but we will take the minutes that you've provided in your application, and we have our own formula for kind of calculating the average minutes per student per day. So it's a tricky question because we're not looking for a certain percentage of students. What we'll do is based on the information you submit, we'll calculate your average minutes and then note your increases from that baseline that you've submitted in your grant application. So the short answer is there's not a required percentage of students. I'll just note that, of course, the more students, the better, because that, of course, will raise your overall average physical activity minutes because you have more students participating. So I hope that answers the question. On a related note, we will certainly fund applications that target just a couple of grade levels, or if it is an after-school program, we certainly fund those. I would encourage you to, if you can include components within your application that target the whole school, or even have options for the whole school to engage in what you're doing, So it's definitely something that we look for. So for example, if you are applying for an after-school running club, if there are ways that you can have events or opportunities for the whole school to be involved, so like a run-a-thon or a 5K or something like that, that is something that we'll look for. So kind of a related response to that question.
Perfect. And does the size of the school affect the likelihood of an award? So I guess really eligibility around this.
So there are no enrollment minimums. So we will consider any grant application regardless of the enrollment size. Of course, we do like to give funds to schools that have larger enrollments if there's an opportunity to affect more students. But ultimately what it comes down to is really the quality of the application. So definitely I would encourage you not to be discouraged if you have a small school. I think the impact could be great even with a small school. So I would say no minimum enrollments, just really focus on the quality of your application, and we'll consider that over any other metric.
Perfect. And can our activities be on the weekends as well, or must they all be on school days?
Weekends are great. The at-home component is definitely something that we'll take note of as well. And I know I had emphasized this in the beginning. One of the grant requirements is to provide information to students and families on physical activity and nutrition. So certainly having something occur on the weekend is a great way to reach parents in this regard.
Great. Is there a minimum number of schools needed to apply for a district application?
So there are no district applications for Game On grants. So there is no minimum number of schools that need to apply. So if, for example, if you're a district level individual and you're applying for 2 grants or 2 schools or 20 schools, that's completely fine. Either one is completely acceptable. As I mentioned, we will evaluate each application on a school-by-school basis and not from a district perspective.
Perfect. We have a question about the funds and if they're allowed to bring in outside vendors to instruct the kids, or what really can they use the funds directly for? Just a few ideas maybe would be helpful.
Sure. So I'll reiterate that the funds can't be used for staffing. So if bringing in an outside vendor involves paying staff to do the program, that unfortunately can't be funded through this grant. Typically what we like to see in terms of the budget is we love to see schools spending it on equipment and materials, especially those that can be used year over year. There is a line for incentives. We do, of course, ultimately what we want to see with the budget is we want to see that most of the funds are being used in a sustainable way and something that could extend beyond the grant year. Of course, incentives are part of that, especially for programs. So you can include incentives for participants in your program. There is a line for evaluation. So if you need to print surveys, you can include a budget line for that as well. But really, the meat of it is under the equipment and materials, and that's something that we'd like to see it spent as sustainably as possible. I hope that helps answer the question. If you have specific questions, if you have something in mind and want to get confirmation of that, definitely let your state coordinator know or our national staff. I'll share the contact information here at the end, and we'll be able to get that specific question answered for you.
Great. I have a school asking if we are already implementing healthy nutrition initiatives in the school with funds from a different grant, can we use 100% of the Game On grant for a physical activity initiative?
Unfortunately, this particular grant, just the way that we share information back with our funders, we have committed to making sure that each and every grant has a nutrition and a physical activity component. So what I would encourage you to do in that situation is kind of evaluate what you're doing around your healthy eating efforts, and if there is an opportunity, even if it's a relatively small opportunity, to build upon that in a way where you're adding an additional healthy eating activity. Maybe it's more taste tests, maybe it's some nutrition education materials to supplement your programming. If you can include that within this grant and then your physical activity initiative, that would qualify. But it is really important that when we review the application that we see that the funds and the project description have both a physical activity and a nutrition component.
Perfect. I have a question about high school students and how they don't typically have gyms. So they're wondering, how do they handle that? Is it through an after-school program, or how do they get their physical activity minutes?
So I hope I'm going to answer this question. I'll answer it in a couple of ways. One is if your school does not have any of the categories listed on the grant application in terms of your minutes, where you're asked to provide how many minutes you're offering for recess and for gym and that sort of thing, that's fine. We don't expect every school to have those. In terms of physical activity opportunities in general for high school students, we've seen a lot of schools apply for the before and after school programming, particularly programming that's non-competitive. So maybe starting a walking club or a yoga club, or as part of their efforts doing running training and a school-wide 5K at the end of the grant period. So most of those do take place before and after school. However, we have seen some schools that have integrated physical activity into the school day. So they've created kind of plans and timelines to train teachers on how to do yoga in the classroom, or how to add physical activity minutes during their lesson, so that high school students are getting some sort of physical activity during the day as well. We've also, in one of our grants last year, a school did kind of a fitness fair during the lunchroom, during the lunch hour. So there was an opportunity for students after they ate lunch, they were able to participate in fitness stations, or before they ate lunch as well, as another way just to kind of, kind of spice it up and add physical activity during the school day. So those are just a few examples that we've seen. If you do have additional questions about what would work in your school, again, your state coordinator can certainly brainstorm with you on potential opportunities and ideas for how you can write this grant.
Perfect. Can the physical activity be comprised of educational materials, or does it have to actually be like, I'm assuming, I think this means like equipment, like actual, they're asking if it should be, can it be, the money go towards materials as in equipment, or does it have to go to actually being physically active?
Mm-hmm. So the funds themselves can go toward any resources that you need to make sure that you're increasing your physical activity minutes. So, for example, if you want to purchase a PE curriculum with the funds, and as a result you're still increasing physical activity as part of implementing PE, that's a great example of something where the funds may not be used directly to purchase equipment, but purchase more of a material. So in that situation, just make it clear in your project description that you are implementing a program that has the opportunity to increase physical activity for students, and then if your funds clearly support that and you can note that in your description of the funds, then that's absolutely acceptable.
Great.
And Jocelyn, let's take maybe just one or two more questions.
Perfect. We have one around Every Kid Healthy Week. He asked, are we required to add money to the budget for the Every Kid Healthy Week celebration?
So there will be a line where you can include funds spent on meetings or events. So if you do want to spend funds on your Every Kid Healthy Week, you can include it there. If you don't need additional funds to put on your Every Kid Healthy Week, it won't be expected that you have that come out of your budget. There is a specific question on the grant application that asks if you plan to host an Every Kid Healthy Week event, and that's really all the information we need at this point, and we'll work with your school to figure out specific details later on. But no, you do not need to specifically designate funds for the Every Kid Healthy Week event in your budget.
Perfect. So there are a lot more questions. I just want to reiterate that as we start to wrap things up, we'll make sure to follow up with each of your questions and let you guys know the answers as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you, Jocelyn. And thank you to all of you for being so active, entering your questions. We definitely will make sure we get those answered. I do want to be mindful of our time, so I want to have just a couple of additional slides to wrap up today's webinar. So first, if you have, like I said, have additional questions outside of this webinar, definitely reach out to your state coordinator. So each state, many states have a state coordinator, and we will send out that contact list following the live session. It is also available on our website if you are too excited to go ahead and get started. And then if you do not have a state coordinator, or if you have just general questions, you can always submit those to schoolgrants@actionforhealthykids.org. We do check that email address every day, and we'll make sure we get back to you in a prompt way. And with that, I'm going to wrap up today's webinar. Again, thanks so much for joining today. We wish you luck in completing your grant application, and we look forward to reviewing them in the coming months.